Hey, and welcome to the Entrepreneurial Mindset put on by Whole Life Entrepreneurship, a community for business owning families. Been asked quite a few times over the last week or so, what is the value of entrepreneurship inside of the executive C-suite? And so I have put this little presentation together to kind of walk you guys through it. So here we go. Who am I? I'm Adam. I'm ruggedly handsome. I quote my sources. That's my wife. She says so, and I believe her. Also been the scholar in residence at Clemson, working with their MBA program. That means I've had the opportunity to write a bunch of books, and you should totally go and buy them for your kids or friends, whatever. 20 years in cybersecurity at various Fortune 500s, different roles in each one of these endeavors, from techie to manager to executive, inside of entrepreneurial endeavors, that is. So 13 years as an entrepreneur, 19 businesses as founder or primary investor, 14 failed companies. I call that my nonprofit work. One successful exit. I sold my first cybersecurity firm, and I have 5 companies in flight. In addition, I am currently chairman of the board for 3 startups, founder of 2 professional communities, and I am also the founder of the Anzus Fund. Whew, that's a big slide. All right, let's get to it. Before we jump in to what is the difference or what kind of entrepreneurial skill sets are necessary for executives, I think it's important to understand that folks are wired differently for different kinds of endeavors. And I am not suggesting that one person moved from one thing to the other. So this is the cash flow quadrant from Rich Dad Poor Dad. You can be an employee where you are trading your time for money. You can be self-employed where you are trading your time and more responsibility for money. You can also read that as more risk. You are a business owner who builds systems and then trades other people's time for money. And that's where most entrepreneurs are. And then investor, where they trade money for money. Now, the cool thing here is the entrepreneur and the executive deal with building systems and having other people run the system. One of the things they have in common is that the executive and the entrepreneur get things done through other people. So there's going to be a lot of similarities, and there are going to be a few differences, and we don't want to blend all the way. We just want to take the best of both worlds. So the entrepreneur creates new markets and new business opportunities. They quickly iterate and they find product market fit. We'll dive into what that looks like later. They also can build a team of true believers through their reality distortion field. Yeah, of course we're going to build a space station. Let's go, guys. And they move things from 0 to 1. That means it didn't exist and now it exists. Typically, though, they don't go from 2 to 99, right? It's 0 to 1 is where their wheelhouse is. And executives are fantastic because they take the long view and they build value over time. And they do that by building and managing up people, processes, and systems. Most executives oversee one or part of a business system, and they get rewarded because if they don't do their job, spend their budget, and hit their goals, the whole system fails, breaking the machine. So it's very, very important that these people are able to produce predictable results based off of forecasts, meaning, hey, this is what I say we're going to do, and then I did it. And we are also going to dive into that a little bit later. Fun fact, most entrepreneurs are horrible executives, and most executives are horrible entrepreneurs. Again, we're not trying to make executives into entrepreneurs. We don't want entrepreneurs running large systems inside of organizations. We want some entrepreneurial traits to be adopted by executives. So this is a business, right? It's all these different gears, and each gear has a job, and each gear is ran by an executive, director, manager, C-suite, VP, the list goes on and on. The title really doesn't matter. What you're really looking at is, does the person have responsibility for a part of the machine? And does that person understand how it affects and impacts all the rest of the machine? And also, does that person understand the purpose of the machine? So let's dive into how the entrepreneurial mindset plays into understanding the world. So first, let's do a couple quotes. In today's complex business environment, entrepreneurs need to operate at a fast pace and think in completely different ways in order to stay competitive. This is the entrepreneurial mindset, and it is a must-have to generate new business growth. That is from Eckerd College. It is valuable to have executives inside of companies adopt some of the aspects of entrepreneurship without losing their ability to manage teams, processes, and systems to produce predictable value. That is by me. That's what I think, and I think I'm right. So how do we go about doing that? Well, there's 4 things that an executive needs to adopt. They need to be able to observe, ideate, see the big picture, and then take action. And not just take action, but take action with success at the end of it. And so that's what we're going to go through right now, these 4 different things. Observe, or S.E.E.D. An executive needs to see. That means see beyond your task or see beyond your gear. At the very least, you need to understand and see the things that your gear is touching, your business process is touching. If I'm in security and I don't understand that if I put a new username and password regulation on top of a thing and then I cut off everybody's access to a particular software suite, I've just broken the machine. So, C. Explore. Exploring is learning things that are not related to your core task. In order to get ideas for ideation, which is coming up next, you need to collect new ways of thinking and new perspectives. And so you go and explore. This can look like going to conferences, books on tape, podcasts. This is what are you feeding your brain with? Explain. Explain is when you go and share what you're learning with others. There's a wonderful video out there about coffee shops and how ideas are formed, and it harkens back to the Renaissance and to the Age of Enlightenment and all these things where folks would sit around in coffee shops and they would talk, and in that talking, people would riff off of each other's ideas. So you want to see what's going on around you, and the bigger the better. You want to explore and find new ideas inside of those observations. And then you want to explain and share those observations with others so that you can begin having conversations and breeding new ideas. And at the end of it, you want to detail everything that you're learning. You want to record the stuff down so that later on during ideation, you can see all the puzzle pieces. So ask yourself, what are some ways that you can see beyond your current tasks, see beyond your gear, and in some cases, it's completely appropriate to see beyond the machine. There's a lot of value that was created for the space agencies. Through NASA, lots of technologies that are used by other folks. So, you can find inspiration and you can find leverage in all kinds of forms and fashion. All right, ideation. How does all this data and wisdom get used? So if ideation is putting puzzle pieces together so that you can see different results, how do we go about doing that? Well, you look for trends. When I build a puzzle, I don't just start putting puzzle pieces together. I look for solid lines around the outside, and I make sure that I start putting those things together, and I begin to slowly see the picture. And after I get a few puzzle pieces together, I understand the next logical steps, and I begin to put all of them together. So I look for trends. And then you also want to look for different results. If we move away from the puzzle analogy and more into chemical reactions, just start pouring things together and see if they explode. That doesn't sound safe, and you probably shouldn't do it exactly that way inside your company, because if you end up breaking the machine, ideation is bad. But you don't know what you don't know, and testing a lot of hypotheses are a good idea. Looking for unlikely pairings is just the easiest way to do this, right? I'll give you an example. I don't particularly love drinking protein shakes, and so I decided what would happen if I poured some of this protein shake into my morning coffee. It was an unlikely pairing, and it resulted in a hard no. I do not like that. But It could have been amazing. So we have to try these unlikely pairings. And this all manifests in you creating a hypothesis. Does protein shake powder taste good in coffee? Quickly test. No. But have no emotional attachment to the results. So if I really, 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 really had an emotional attachment to it's got to work. I have to put this protein shake into my coffee, and if it doesn't taste good, we'll just add sweetener, and I'll just keep no, let the data be the data. Don't have an emotional attachment. This is a world of plenty and bountifulness. You will always find more opportunities to have more hypotheses. Do not hold on to an idea just because you have some kind of emotional attachment to it or what you perceive the results should be. And that brings us into the big picture, right? And this is where this emotional attachment comes into. If you have an emotional attachment to an idea, you're going to force it into a big picture where it may not fit. And here's how you figure out what the big picture is. So this is an entrepreneurial one-page business plan called a Lean Business Canvas. This is out of Stanford, and there's a lot of different variations on this that other people have done. Honestly, it doesn't really matter. The idea is get a one-page thing that you can slap together. And that is the idea. You just go ahead and start filling all these boxes in, and we'll get into an example of that in a little bit. But it helps you detail your hypothesis over what's my value proposition, meaning, hey, what do people actually want? And then customer segment is, hey, who am I serving? And channels is how do they want to buy, right? So we're going to get through that with what does this look like for an executive and why this is important. That is the link to a wonderful YouTube video. Feel free to go watch that. I am not going to do that for the recording. Let's look at Coke. So value proposition, delicious Coca-Cola. Customer segments. You notice that their customer segment is not you. It is not the individual consumer. Their customer segment is they sell to large retail outlets and small shops and restaurants. The small shop and restaurants and large retail outlets, their customers are you. But Coke is a manufacturer and distributor, not a reseller directly to the end client. So that really just dictates on their channels, right? Large scale distribution and manual distribution centers. The fact that they're not trying to sell stuff to you directly online is a telltale sign that you are not their end customer. And yes, they do produce all kinds of marketing and all kinds of things, but that is to assist their customer segment, not to drive you to buy directly for them. And so when they figured that out, that large retail organizations wanted to purchase Coca-Cola through distributors, they discovered they had something called product market fit. They had something that was repeatable, something that they understood. And then look at all these other things, right? They have their bottler partnerships. They understand their cost structure, the revenue streams. And so very quickly you can see, all right, these are all of the things that we need to do. These are all of our hypotheses. Business at a glance. There's Coke. So we can make it simpler though, because that, if we go back actually, you'll see the cost structure and revenue streams. Revenue streams is income. Cost structure is how you're spending money, right? And then all of the stuff above those two things are actually the stuff that you're doing. But when you look at a simplified business model, which is the oldest model in business in the world, is revenue minus expenses equals profit. Meaning, how do we make money? How are we spending money to make money? And how does that money get retained or distributed after the fact? It's really just three things, right? So we can simplify all this. The Lean Business Canvas is for ideation and finding ideas and putting them out there and then organizing your thoughts so that you can begin to slowly see the big picture. But then you need to step back and get simple again. And then after we're simple, we're going to get a little bit more complex, because revenue minus expense equals profit may be the business model of old, but corporations these days are pretty complicated and they have a lot of moving parts. So you have tactical profit is the result of revenue by minus expenses. And that means short term, typically now till 6 months, a couple quarters. Revenue, expense, profit. Strategy. This is longer than a year. This is, how are we going to make money in 3 quarters to, 6 quarters. And then here's the tricky one, perceived. Perceived is how do customers and investors see you, right? Because a big thing to understand here is that perceived value is much more powerful than actual value in some cases. Think of it as you have the perception of security with TSA, even though it doesn't actually keep you safe. But people do it anyway, and we don't complain because there's some perceived value. And so what we do is we end up having executives over each one of these. So the VP of sales is in charge of tactical revenue. The only thing the VP of sales cares about is having an organization, processes, and procedures in place that closes revenue now, so that that person can tell the CFO, this is how much money we're going to make. And I mean, everyone has had a salesperson come up to them in Q4 of a fiscal year where they have to close and meet quota, right? It's very tactical. Tactical expense, that's COO work. That's Chief Operating Officer. They care about, how do I build efficiencies? How do I reduce expenses? How do I make sure that we can create a higher quality product in less time for less money, right? Tactical CFO enables tactical work by giving the VP of sales quotas. We need you to make this much money, and giving the tactical COO budgets. You are only allowed to spend this much money, because the CFO must guarantee profits to the CEO. And so the thing that she uses are quotas for VP of sales and budgets for Chief Operation Officer. This is how much you should make. This is how much you should spend. And if everything works out, I can tell the CEO that we're going to make this much profit. So now we move into strategic stuff. So if the VP of sales is responsible for closing business now, strategic revenue is the chief marketing officer. The chief marketing officer is all about the money we're going to make later, opening up new opportunities, setting the VP of sales up for success. So they're going to do the work ahead of time to loosen up the markets so the VP of sales salespeople can come in and actually close business. And they're also there to understand the customer. The CMO really does have a grasp on the trends of what the customers are doing, while the VP of sales has a grasp of why the customer is buying, or at least they should. So the strategic COO is all about future scalability, future gosh, my mind is going blank. It's where the strategic COO is all about, how do we create technologies through research and development that are going to drastically change how we produce quality products, right? And then the strategic profit is, again, our CFO, and she also gives CMO and COO quotas and budgets. But strategic revenue isn't really driven on quotas, because they're not measuring the revenue that's coming in. They're usually driven on bringing data about how they're actually entering markets. So the CMO gets a lot of money, and then it's kind of softer on how to measure it. And as a matter of fact, that's true for R&D as well. It's very difficult to measure strategic value. So often strategy gets ignored, and we spend a lot of time on tactical. And then one poor person has to manage perception. That's the CEO. So the CEO builds all of these folks up. They build the team, and they hold the vision, and then they capitalize the company. And they then have to report up to a board of directors and sometimes to Wall Street and say, this is what's going on in the company. So the CEO needs to have the VP of sales being able to tell them what's going on. They need to be able to have all of these levers that they can pull and say, let me tell you the compelling story of our company and how awesome we are, right? Well, there's another folk missing here, and that is the CIO. That's technology. That's IT, information technology alignment. And the way that this works is that the CIO enables everybody else through technology. Because underneath all of these folks, there is underlying methodologies that are supported by technology, business processes and systems that need to be secured, that need to be enabled, and need to be enriched. And that's the CIO's job. So let's continue with the CIO as our example going forward for the entrepreneurial mindset, because the CIO, more than pretty much any other executive, really has to be entrepreneurial, because they don't have a lot of power, but they do have a lot of responsibility. And so what they're trying to do is find product market fit. So it's very, very complicated. Each and every one of those executive has their own thing that they are worried about, right? I went through all the tactical, strategic, and perception stuff. And so the customer segment would be the CXO that you're trying to work with. And your value proposition to them would be, how do I, as a CIO, produce something that helps them? So if I'm the VP of sales and I'm having a hard time reporting back to the CFO about how great I'm doing, then a CIO's value proposition to this VP of sales is, hey, why don't I deploy some really cool technology that will measure and report automatically for you what your salespeople are doing? Wonderful. They would love it. Maybe. Because if you bring an idea to somebody and you don't bring it in the right way, then they're going to look at you as a distraction. They're going to look at you as somebody who doesn't know what's going on, and somebody's going to put them at risk. And that's the channel. So the channel is, how do I bring my value to a customer? How does the CIO bring this idea for a new CRM, the customer relationship management tool, to the VP of sales? Well, it has to be done using a lot of different tools and techniques, but the most important one is emotional intelligence and empathy. You need to go talk to a person. You need to practice the old art of sitting down with a cup of coffee and saying, "Hey, let's chat. What you up to? What you doing?" So, as a executive trying to learn more about what's going on inside of your company so that you can do observation, ideation, and see the big picture, it really helps to build a lean business canvas for each CXO, right? So let's go back a little bit here. Oh, this was a mistake. Being able to do a lean business canvas for all the CXOs allows you to understand their vision, their gears, and what's moving on with them so that you can then find opportunities to work with other executives. All right, moving on. Oh, how smart. I actually had that slide next. Well done, Adam. Anyway, so there you are. Feel free to reach out to me, adamandersonCEO.com, and I will send you some examples, and I will get you the copies of some of these things, or just Google it. I know you can Google. You're good. So why is all this important? Well, if you don't have the lay of the land, you don't have the big picture, you don't have the ability to talk to people, you have no ability to take action. So you might have that CRM idea. You might have this great idea for a thing, and you've got all the supporting information. But if you don't build the groundworks for product market fit, where your customer is receptive or your partner is receptive to what you're trying to do, you will not be able to take action. Let's dive into that a little bit. Here's the C-suite. There's 2 business units, and everybody communicates flawlessly together. So if you have a great idea and you're a producer, it's easy for you to talk to other producers in other organizations and then take the stuff all the way up to the C-suite, and it's flawless and there's no problems. Unfortunately, we know that's not what happens. Communication breaks down, things get escalated, communication's still breaking down, executives are going to handle it. Nope, they're not. Hey, let's escalate to the C-suite. Nope, we're not going to do that. So this is the way most organizations look like, where there are friction points between communication and sharing of ideas. And this is just what an entrepreneur faces when they're trying to bring a new idea into a company. You have to be able to lay the groundwork so you can have clear and concise communication, and it has to be safe. We call that psychological safety, or SISEC. How can I create an environment that allows people to feel safe enough to be vulnerable and open to new ideas and to share their opinions? Because if you don't have that, it's very, very difficult to progress new ideas and to take action, because there's going to be somebody in this org chart who's going to say no, and it's going to stop you from moving forward and taking action. It is much, much more important to lay that groundwork inside of your organization than it is to actually have a really cool whiz-bang widget. So, going with our example of the CIO, how does the CIO typically win budget? Well, in the past, they used compliance and fear. You have to do this or you can't sell. Hey, VP of sales, we've got HIPAA concerns and we've got Sarbanes-Oxley and PCI, so you got to be compliant. And oh, by the way, we're going to scare you because if you don't do these things, we're going to get hacked and everything's going to go bad, blah, 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 right? And so we use FUD, fear, uncertainty, and doubt. And after a while, fear, uncertainty, and doubt actually become like white noise. People become really desensitized to the sky is falling, right? And compliance typically makes things a mess. If all you're driven by is compliance, where you're forcing people to do things because they have to, like if you are the CMO and you're going to the COO and saying the CEO really, really wants this mobility initiative, so you have to do it. You have to be compliant to the thing. Well, look, if you're forcing people to do things because they have to, you will get some short-term results, but you are going to have long-term reduction in collaboration, right? So basically, short-term wins, long-term loss. So how do we get around that? Well, you've got to change beliefs. Your beliefs? Yes. You've got to change yourself before you can change the world. You got to decide you're going to do something different in order to be able to take action. And so you're not going to scare and bully people. We call that power plays. And you're not going to stonewall and walk away from people. That's called walkaways. You're going to change how you approach people using emotional intelligence, servant leadership, and conflict resolution. And you're going to start by doing a few things. So if you're the problem, meaning you cannot change other people, so you have to change yourself, and that means you're the problem, but the good news is that means you're also the solution. There's a couple things you can do. You can understand the target. You got to understand what you're actually trying to accomplish, because if you go in without goals, without targets, you're going to sail around an ocean and never find a port. And you're never going to get anything done, but you're going to look super busy. You're also going to have to understand your role. So your role of forcing your ideas as an executive through has to change. So picture a gear, and the gear is stuck. If you just force that thing through, you're going to damage the other gears around you. And the engine might start moving again, but you're going to be causing damage. So you do not want to be the role of bulldozer through an organization. And also you got to change your words. Words are power. If you use words in an unconscious way, in an unintentional way, you might be making a lot more work for yourself. So let's dive into that. The target. Man, the CFO is a great place to figure out the target, because the CFO has been given clear and concise instructions from the CEO, who's gotten those instructions from the board on what we're trying to accomplish. And how the CFO applies budgets and gives money is a really good weather vane as to what are the values of the company, right? Don't look at the values of the company on that plaque or on that banner. Look at how the company actually spends their money, and you'll be able to understand their values and what the true target of the company is, right? So remember, if your CFO is the weather vane and I'm looking at the CIO and the CIO reports directly to the CFO, chances are they want IT and the information technology to control expenses. So if you are directly reporting to the CFO, chances are they're looking at you as risky or as something that can help them control expenses. If your CIO is directly reporting to the CEO, then they are expecting you to create shareholder values. C-suite members who report to the CEO are there to directly help the CEO build shareholder value, right? So figure out where your executive reports to, right? Your C-suite executive reports to this C-suite executive, and that is going to really help you understand what your target is. Because if you're a VP inside of a IT organization and you're reporting up to the CFO, then you bringing really cool ideas on how to grow market share is not going to be received well. But you bringing really cool ideas, how you can just crush operating expenses by moving to a cloud solution, people are going to be very interested. So cost savings over expansion. And hey, look, your mileage may vary. You got to figure out where your executive works and go talk to them, right? If you are the CIO or if you're the CXO, then you got to really understand what your roles are and communicate clearly down through your organization. And if you're an executive inside the organization, go have a heart-to-heart conversation with your CXO and find out what their target is. Fun fact, also, when I go back to saying the CFO, how you spend money, budgets also include bonuses. So if you understand the bonus structure for the C-suite, you will also understand the target. I guarantee you, right? If the CMO is going to get a bonus based off of acquiring X% market share, anything that you talk to that CMO about that also helps them get to there is going to be well received. I'm not saying everyone's coin operated. I'm saying that the weather vane is how the company deploys money. All right. So what is the role in this case for information technology? If we continue our CIO role example, the idea here is to not be the hero. You are not the gear that shines the brightest. You're the gear that produces value. So you be Yoda, not Luke. You don't come in and tell everybody, I'm going to save you. Right? If you're looking at product market fit, where you have some kind of value to the other parts of your organization, and you walk in all Luke Skywalker-y like and say, I'm going to, take care of all this, I'm the hero, you're going to get so much pushback because no one likes anyone coming in and telling them what to do, especially if they don't believe you know what you're talking about. It's much better to act as Yoda. Go in, have emotional intelligence, have empathy for their position, take the time to build the relationship, have the conversations, and then move into an advisory role. So your role is not to be the hero. The hero is going to be the other person in the room sitting across the table from you. If you can make them the hero, you have really done a good job in implementing the emotional intelligence and the entrepreneurial mindset methodologies here. Now let's get into words. So, we motivated people to take action through fear, meaning risk. We also use compliance. Hey, someone told me that you had to. And we also are trying to run a business. And so how the business perceives you is based off of how you handle risk and compliance. If you think you own the risk, you own the entire risk of the entire organization, you're going to approach everything from a fear mindset or a fight or flight mindset, and you're going to reduce your ability for collaboration and creativity. So you can be aware of the risk. You can be aware of the stuff that's going on through your observations. You have that really good idea that you want to bring over to the VP sales because of hey, let's have this new CRM tool. But you go in as an advisor, not as you should do this. I'm not going to, if you don't, spooky, bad things are going to happen. And also, you're not enforcing compliance. Hey, the CEO told me we're going to do this mobility initiative, so your organization has to toe the line. Nope. You want to align. Hey, the CEO said that we're going to do this mobility initiative, and so I see that I've got some dependency on your organization has some on mine. Let's advise each other. So you invite them to advise you just as you're advising them on how do we make this thing happen, right? And that moves you from inflicting yourself on the business. You're that squeaky wheel getting all the grease. You're that rusty gear that as it's spinning, it's throwing off all this stuff and sparks, to a well-lubed machine that's enabling each other. So remember, your job in your new role as Yoda is to align what you're doing with other parts of the machine, with other gears, with other people, and then advise and be open to being advised on how all this stuff works together, and that moves to business enablement. So, what are the results of this? Through organizational awareness and practical implementation of EIQ, the executive can build a large knowledge base of possibilities through observation, ideate on those opportunities for the company based on the possibilities, understand what should and should not be prioritized based on the big picture, right? Just because you have a good idea doesn't mean you should do it. Build relationships and remove barriers through communications so action can be taken, right? So if you have all these great ideas, but you haven't done the groundwork to understand the other people in your organization and don't know what product market fit looks like for them or what their major motivations are, it's going to be real hard to get anything done. So we've talked a little bit about what the executive mindset needs to do in order to adopt the entrepreneurial mindset. let's go through an assessment. So this is going to be talking about the personality traits and the actual skill sets required for executives to adopt the entrepreneurial mindset. And you can reach out to me, and I will happily get these assessments in your hand. They're not very expensive at all, and they're very interesting. So let's take a look. Personality scales. An executive who wants to adopt entrepreneurial mindset must be comfortable with independence. They prefer limited structure. They're probably nonconformists. They have risk acceptance, meaning they see risk in a little bit different way. They're action-oriented, passion, and they need to achieve, right? So let's look at each of these. Independence, the desire to work with a high degree of independence. That means I don't want to be told what to do. I want to understand the mountain you want me to go climb. I want you to point at that hill and say, go get it. And then I want to figure it out. I want to go do that. That doesn't mean I want to work alone. That means I want independence and being able to come up with solutions, not being told what to do. Limited structure means I need a lot of freedom, right? So if you're going to tell me to take that hill and I have independence, but you force me into a structure that means, okay, take that hill, but you have to use that road and you have to use these trucks. That really is not going to be conducive to the entrepreneurial mindset. Nonconformity. Typically, this person likes to do unique ways. If somebody else has already done it, then all of the lessons have already been learned, and we need to do things differently. Remember hypothesis and ideation to get better information. So the entrepreneurial mindset encourages nonconformity because it gives you new and interesting insights on data. Risk acceptance. For me, I feel like risk acceptance is a softer thing because when I go an entrepreneur, I never know if the probability of succeeding is low. What I know is that I need more information and I need more wisdom, so I'm going to go do things and I'm going to mess around with stuff. And every single time I do that, I'm going to learn something new and I'm going to build another layer on top of this thing called success. So I really do feel like risk assessment is a redefinition of success during the process. Or I'm deluding myself and I just roll the dice all the time. I like my way better. Action-oriented. Yeah, we want to do quick start. We want to make the thing move quickly, and if we don't see things moving quickly, we get super impatient. That's, by the way, a warning sign, because if you also have passion, then you're going to get really dragged under with slow performance, right? So passion is tendency to experience one's work as exciting and enjoyable, and if things don't move quickly for the entrepreneurial mindset, we don't find it exciting and enjoyable. And so we also have a need to achieve. And look, that's just, we want to hit a high level of achievement. We don't want to just be mediocre. If you look at my Strengths Finder Maximizer is way up there, man. I don't want to just build a little company. I want giant companies. I want companies that have huge impacts on the world. So here's the results. The blue line is what most corporate managers are. The green line is what most entrepreneurs are for this study, and then the kind of brownish reddish line is your results. And so you'll see that I'm off the charts on most of these, but if you go to passion, I'm actually below most entrepreneurs. And also risk assessment is much lower on the trend than what my line graph should have seen, and that's because I've done way too many of these. I've had 19 companies. My passion is still there, but I don't think every new idea is the holy grail. I'm very comfortable with the things coming and going, and I don't have to act on each and every one of them. And risk assessment is, I've done enough of these that if I see that the thing isn't going to be moving quickly or getting desired results, I kill the idea as soon as possible. So I have a quick start and a quick end. So let's talk about the skills that are necessary future focus, idea generation, execution, self-confidence, optimism, persistence, and interpersonal sensitivity. This is a better way of saying the skills that we just went over, right? We went through the 4 different things, which were observation through S.E.E.D, ideation, what was the third one? Oh, yeah, the big picture, and then also taking action. And these are the skills necessary to progress through those. So real quickly, future focus, you think beyond the immediate situation. Idea generation, this is ideation based off of new ideas. Execution, hey, now that I have all this stuff and I'm able to put a project together, can I actually get the thing done? Can I move the ball forward? So many people have a great idea. So many people had thought of Facebook. So many people have thought of Google. If you didn't execute, your idea doesn't matter. So when someone says, hey, I've got a really great idea, I don't want to hear it. If someone says, hey, I'm doing this really cool idea thing, that's what I want to hear. Self-confidence. Hey, this is the reality distortion field. This is the absolutely we can do this. So some people are paranoid. When you leave a room, you're positive that somebody is talking really like horrible behind your back. I am paranoid. When I leave a room, I'm absolutely positive everyone stopped their conversation and is talking about how awesome I am. So that does sound a little bit like narcissistic behavior, but it's actually a healthy way of possessing self-confidence. You can perceive the world however you want, so why not have the perception that the world is fantastic? Optimism, that goes back into my perception comment. I really do believe most of the time things are going to be fantastic. Persistence, and I also believe that if you just hang in there long enough, you will give the opportunity a chance to come to fruition. Interpersonal sensitivity, these are emotional intelligence and social skills that allow us to actually communicate with folks. So this calls it high-level sensitivity to and concern for the well-being of those who with one works. I'm not super proud of this. If you look at that last part, interpersonal sensitivity, I am below almost everybody. But it is an interesting trend. You look at the blue line, which is corporate managers, and corporate managers have the most interpersonal sensitivity, meaning that they absolutely get things done by working with other people. While entrepreneurs frequently build teams but are separate from the teams. They are the weird thinking, strange person who has to operate alone. And after doing this long enough, and after having so many companies fail and having to fire so many people over my time, it's hard for me to do the interpersonal sensitivity stuff because it's so painful to get close to people and then have the whole project die on you. So I have all of the skill sets necessary to do the thing, but this is why I am chairman of the board of multiple companies and not CEOs, because my interpersonal sensitivity is too low to build healthy, supportive cultures when I'm running the show. It's so much easier if I'm just advising the CEO or managing the CEO. So here's some tools and tricks. Learn how to do good conflict resolution. We can teach you that at Whole Life Entrepreneurship. It's fantastic. Build some emotional IQ and EIQ and learn how to do some servant leadership. Again, we can help you with that. Go get yourself a lean business canvas and try to organize your observations, right? Because if you just drift through the world seeing observations, but you don't write them down, put the puzzle pieces together, it's hard to take action. And finally, you know what? As far as those observations go, you gotta manage intentionally the feeds going into your brain. Go talk to new people, go to events, go places you've never been before, travel, get exposed to new ideas. And then finally, build connections with other people inside of your organization and also outside of the organization, because an idea in your head executed by yourself that's never brought to anybody else is a thing that's dead on arrival. You need to begin having conversations with people. And be careful who those people are, though, because you don't want a false negative, right? If I've got this new thing and you're not somebody who would ever buy that thing, and I ask your opinion, well, of course you're saying no. But I have to find the person who would say yes. So if I'm the information, the CIO, and I've got this new cool customer relationship management tool for the VP of sales, and I go to the chief operations officer, that person's not going to care about my new stuff, but the VP sales would. So build connections with other people in your organization so that you know how to build product market fit and how to be Yoda for those people. All right. Well, that was the Entrepreneur Mindset, bringing the best of entrepreneurship into organizations without losing the best parts of being an executive. Thanks for your time, guys.